Hello there. I'd like to say a few things about the film Poor Things. It's a film I really loved. I know it's a rather divisive film. Some people love it, some people hate it. I'm in the people who loved it in camp, and there are some really great analysis of them as well. Mostly, we know it's about growing up, and it's about the story of a young woman learning about life, learning about her body, exploring the world, exploring her sexuality, and so on. And there are also some interpretations about it, like in a feministic approach, like how men in her life try to imprison her or try to keep her captive, and how she defeats them one by one, um, and then comes back home, or it's also in a strange way a coming of age story, and so on. As being a growing up story and coming of age story, it has, I think, a lot to say about parent child relationships, and specifically about generational trauma. And I think that's an overlooked quality about the film. It has things to say about generational trauma, and I haven't seen anyone talking about it. So let's have a look. First, let's have a look into the father figure, Godwin. Godwin's own father has been a psychopath, a monster. Not necessarily a sadist one, but we know that he never loved his kid. He saw Godwin as an experiment only, and even just not to torture him, but did a lot of horrible experiments on him, mutilated his own son, castrated him, took out of some glands out of the stomach, cut the face, cut the fingers to examine the muscles, and so on and so on. And during this period, Godwin had no chance to feel any love, any compassion, had no social life, because since he was so ugly and scary, people stayed away from him. So everything in his life was his job. And during his painful life, he developed ways to deal with this pain, like looking at his intact fingers instead of the cut fingers to forget about the pain. He has like hints here and there. But how is that relevant to Bella? Well, we see that he has inherited a lot of things from his father. First, Godwin himself is also a brilliant scientist, a brilliant surgeon. It's obvious he does some weird experiments, and by saving life of Bella and adopting her, we also know that he is skilled enough to do that fantastic surgery. But he also adopted some of the mannerisms of his father, namely, his approach to science is equally brutal. He sees Bella as his experiment, and he tries to apply the same scientific principles he learned from his father, namely, keeping her under constant observation in controlled conditions, imprisoning her at home, not showing her any compassion. But Godwin is not his father. He actually knows very well what it's like to not feel any compassion, not receive any love. And he tries to resolve this problem. First of all, let's look at his choice of assistant. He could have chosen any one of his top students, brilliant students, but instead he chose one of the mediocre ones who he knows to be a nice and soft guy. So he wouldn't want some ambitious asshole taking care of his daughter. He wants, at least in some instinctive level inside him, he knows that he wants someone softer and nicer to accompany his daughter. And that makes actually a turning point in the story, because he observes the new assistant, whose name escapes me now, does things a bit differently. His approach to Bella, although he's doing his job, is more compassionate. The way he talks to Bella, the way he has chats, how soft he is, how compassionate he is, how he treats her as a person instead of just an object. Something inside Godwin starts breaking apart, some walls start breaking down. And then we have this dialogue between Godwin and the assistant, which is about marriage. Quite a few people take that as some kind of sexual abuse scenario and dismiss it, which is a shame because, yeah, from outside it does look like that, but if you pay attention to the subtleties, it's something completely different. Basically, Godwin has a massive conflict inside. On one hand, he wants Bella to be loved. He wants Bella to be happy. He knows very well what it's supposed to, what it feels like to suffer like he did. So he tries to come up with a solution, with it, cheat the situation, have his cake and eat it too. So he proposes this marriage because he knows the assistant is a nice guy, and he says specifically, I know, I'm paraphrasing, I know how love looks like on people's eyes. I know what love looks like as an observer. He says it's in a very scientific, in a matter-of-fact way, but we all know what he's saying, right? Emotionally, deep inside, there he's saying, nobody loved me. Nobody showed any love to me. I've never experienced anybody's love. That's what he's saying. And he thinks by providing a loving company to Bella at home, he can keep her happy and loud and still uphold his scientific principles of constantly observing her and keeping the distance and keeping her in controlled conditions. Of course, we know it's bullshit. Maybe deep inside he also knows it is bullshit, but he's desperately trying to come up with a solution to bring these two sides of him together. And then the dialogue continues. The assistant says, talks about, I'm sorry, I thought you were raising Bella as a mistress for yourself. And I was wrong, please forgive me. At that point, someone with a more normal emotional intelligence might get angry. Like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, she's my daughter. Or, even if he's calm, he needs to say only 3 words. She is my daughter. And that would be enough of an explanation, but he doesn't. There hasn't been place for emotions in his life, so he doesn't know how to talk about them. It's very common for kids who grow up alone or emotionally neglected or maybe have autism, that their vocabulary is often very precise and scientific. They express less emotions and more they talk big words, precise words, official words, and there's a reason why autistic kids are called little professors, because it affects their language. So we see the effect of like that on Bella as well. Sometimes she doesn't know everyday words or figures of speech, but she knows big words and talks in a very official and scientific way. Back to Godwin. The assistant gives his apology about thinking that he's raising Bella as a mistress, and Goldwyn doesn't get enraged or doesn't say she's my daughter. What does he say? He makes a very logical, objective, scientific point. That's what he does. He talks about how he is castrated and how much energy it takes for him to reach an orgasm. That's so many kilowatts at so much time. It would be so much of a waste, and this is why sexuality has no place in his life. I mean, he could have said just sexuality has no place in my life, but he's a scientist. He talks like he's giving a scientific presentation, and he has to make a strong argument, like that's what he feels. And then he adds a secondary thing as if it's also exists. He says, well, besides, my fatherly feelings towards her would prevent me from having any sexual desire towards her. That's the main thing. For someone who understands emotions, that's the main thing, but he just throws it away as, yeah, there's this exists, because scientifically or objectively he can't support that argument. It's just something to say. So it feels like that's the less important thing. But to us, we know that that's actually the main thing. And then there comes the point where this asshole lawyer gets under Bella's skin and convinces her to run away. That's the point Goldwyn completely breaks down, that he's finally becomes aware that and accepts that, yeah, he can't keep these two principles together. He can't keep his scientific principles and keep Bella happy. That's impossible. So he allows her to run away. And there he does one last thing. He knows that he cannot accompany Bella in her adventures. So he does a very natural thing, very fatherly thing. Gives her some emergency money in a secret pocket. We know that later Bella would throw that money away. That would symbolize her being completely independent, completely standing on her own feet and not needing her father anymore. But at this point, we are not there yet. And for Goldwyn, as a father, that's the most he could do. And while Bella has her adventures in Lisbon and on the ship and whatever, we see Goldwyn becomes so depressed he can't focus on his job anymore. He's worried sick about her. He misses her. So there he's just in full on father mode. And way towards the end, when Bella finally decides to get married, despite his horrible health, he takes a cocktail of, if I remember correctly, heroin and cocaine and amphetamine just to make it to her wedding. That's out of pure love. It's the most stereotypical, the most cheesy thing a father would want, to walk his daughter down the aisle. And he's there, he further destroys his body and he uses his science just to be there for his daughter on an important day. So that's the journey of Goldwyn. And he knows that she's gonna have sex with a seductive asshole and maybe more. And he's, as a father, not that happy about her because he wants her to be with a decent guy. But he is also aware that she needs to make her own mistakes. And he knows what it's like to be deprived of sex because he was castrated as a kid, and that can't be healthy for him. He must have built up frustrations for his whole life. Again, he knows very well what it is to be like sex deprived as well, or how it is to be contained in a house. So the best he can do for his daughter to just let her go. Meanwhile, Bella, while carrying a lot of her father inside her, she has more adventures. She sees places, she experiences riches, she experiences poverty, she sees people suffering extremely, she has philosophical dialogues, she meets a lot of people, experiences a lot of places, experiences pain, has adventures, and then decides to come back. And we see that she has inherited still a lot from her father. She inherits his job, she becomes a brilliant surgeon herself. She inherits his tendency to do weird experiments. She inherits his home, the surgical theater, even inherits his assistant. The assistant, now her practical husband, is her assistant. So there is a lot of Godwin still inside her, but through experiencing life and experiencing different people and experiencing different thoughts and learning from a lot of people, she manages to carve mostly her own path while maintaining some of her father's inside her. Meanwhile, back to Godwin, he has spent most of his life in isolation. So he's almost completely defined by his trauma, but by what his father has done to him. And only after he starts working with the assistant and observing his assistant, something inside him cannot stay anymore. So even Godwin starts moving past some of his traumas and carving his own path and not being his father but his own man, thanks to having this assistant and thanks to his dialogues with him and thanks to observing him. So here the author of the film is giving us a very clear message, a very clear Aesop. He's saying to grow as our own person, to start moving past our traumas. It may not be possible to move away from all of them, but to at least start moving and to heal, we need experiences. We need to know more people. We need to have more life experiences. We need to learn and see more. Talk to people, know more people, experience different things. That's what makes us grow. And that's how we can leave our past traumas behind in the past. I hope you found this interesting, and see you later.